It's your boy Anzu. And tonight, we're going to be reading some creepy stories. Famous creepypastas from creepypasta.com. Can you believe it? There's a whole website, and it's even got a famous creepypasta section. There's some absolute classics here. And we're sorting them by like rating. I guess we should sort them by default. Oh, there's Algo. Nice. Hero Brian, Jeff the Killer Reboot, Jeff the Killer Scars of Corruption. Lavender Town Syndrome. Oh yeah, okay, let's go. Let's get started. I kind of don't want to go in order. I want to pick ones that I want to read. Because I haven't read a lot of these. What? But maybe we should read the most famous one, which is called 1999. Estimated reader time 33 minutes. Oh, dang. I don't know about this one, actually. 33 minutes. How much time do you actually have? Not that much. 5 minutes of reading? Absolutely better. All right, let's read Dead Bart. You know how Fox has a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? They refuse to count a couple of them, making the amount of episodes inconsistent. The reason for this is a lost episode from season 1. Finding details about this missing episode is difficult. Make this bigger. No one who was working on the show at the time likes to talk about it. From what has been pieced together, the lost episode was written entirely by Matt Groening. During production of the first season, Matt started to act strangely. He was very quiet, seemed nervous and morbid. Mentioning this to anyone who was present results in them getting very angry, forbidding you to ever mention it to Matt. The episode's production number was 7G44. The title was Dead Bart. In addition to getting angry, asking anyone who was on the show about this will cause them to do everything they can to stop you from directly communicating with Matt Groening. At a fan event, I managed to follow him after he spoke to the crowd, and eventually had a chance to talk to him alone as he was leaving the building. He didn't seem upset that I had followed him. Probably expected a typical encounter with an obsessive fan. We can turn the music a little, huh? How's that? Good. When I mentioned the lost episode, though, all color drained from his face, and he started trembling. When I asked him if he could tell me any details, he sounded like he was on the verge of tears. He grabbed the piece of paper, wrote something on it, and handed it to me. He begs me never to mention the episode again. The piece of paper had a website address on it. I would rather not say what it was, for reasons you'll see in a second. I entered the address into my browser, and I came to a site that was completely black, except for a line of yellow text. A download link. I clicked on it, and a file started downloading. Once the file was downloaded, my computer went crazy. It was the worst virus I had ever seen. System restore didn't work. The entire computer had to be rebooted. Before doing this, though, I copied the file onto a CD. Incredible. A tech genius at work. I tried to open it on my now empty computer, and as I suspected, there was an episode of The Simpsons on it. The episode started off like any other episode, but had very poor quality animation. If you've ever seen the original animation for Some Enchanted Evening, it was similar, but less stable. The first act was fairly normal, but the way the characters acted was a little off. Homer seemed angrier, Marge seemed depressed, Lisa seemed anxious, Bart seemed to have genuine anger and hatred for his parents. The episode was about the Simpsons taking a plane trip. Near the end of the first act, the plane was taking off. Bart was fooling around, as you'd expect. However, as the plane was about 50 feet off the ground, Bart broke a window on the plane and was sucked out. At the beginning of the series, Matt had an idea that the animated style of The Simpsons worlds represent life, and that death turned things more realistic. This was used in this episode. The picture of Bart's corpse was barely recognizable. They took full advantage of it not having to move, and made an almost photorealistic drawing of his dead body. Act 1 ended with the shot of Bart's corpse. When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting at their table, crying. The crying went on and on. It got more pained and sounded more realistic, better acting than you would think possible. The animation started to decay even more as they cried, and you could hear murmuring in the background. This crying went on for all of Act 2. Act 3 opened with a title card saying 1 year had passed. Homer, Marge, and Lisa were skeletally thin and still sitting at the table. There was no sign of Maggie or the pets. They decided to visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. They all looked abandoned. When they got to the grave, Bart's body was just lying in front of his tombstone, looking just like it did at the end of Act 1. Now that looks like a screenshot of Homer from the episode. Sup, Crandall? Welcome to Creepypasta reading. If you have any requests, I'll see if they're on creepypasta.com. This is the unreleased script for Treehouse of Horror. It's the lost episode, Dead Bart. The family started crying again. Eventually, they stopped and just stared at Bart's body. The camera zoomed in on Homer's face. According to summaries, Homer tells a joke at this part, but it isn't audible in the version I saw. You can't tell what Homer is saying. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in the background had the names of every Simpsons guest star on them. Some that no one had heard of in 1989. Some that haven't been on the show yet. All of them have death dates on them. For guests who died since, like Michael Jackson and George Harrison, the dates were when they would die. You can try to use the tombstones to predict the death of living Simpsons guest stars, but there's something odd about most of the ones who haven't died yet. All of their deaths are listed as the same date. Yeah, that's a pretty good ending. Unfortunately, I don't know many creepypasta. Me neither. That's why I'm exploring them. That's why I'm reading them. Dead Bart. That was easy. First one done. A missing Simpsons episode. Gateway of the Mind. Oh, do you know this one? 3 minutes of reading. We love that. All right, let's read it. In 1983, a team of deeply pious scientists conducted a radical experiment in an undisclosed facility. The scientists had theorized that a human without access to any senses or ways to perceive stimuli would be able to perceive the presence of God. They believed that the five senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them, a human could actually establish contact with God by thought. An elderly man who claimed to have nothing left to live for was the only test subject to volunteer. To purge him of all his senses, the scientists performed a complex operation in which every sensory nerve connection to the brain was surgically severed. Although the test subject retained full muscular function, he could not see, hear, taste, smell, or feel. With no possible way to communicate with or even sense the outside world, he was alone with his thoughts. Scientists monitored him as he spoke aloud about his state of mind in jumbled, slurred sentences that he couldn't even hear. After 4 days, the man claimed to be hearing hushed, unintelligible voices in his head. Assuming it was an onset of psychosis, the scientists paid little attention to the man's concerns. Now that just seems dumb. They're waiting to hear the voice of God. Why are they turning away from these unintelligible voices? 2 days later, the man cried that he could hear his dead wife speaking with him, and even more, he could communicate back. The scientists were intrigued, but were not convinced until the subject started naming dead relatives of the scientists. He repeated personal information to the scientists that only their dead spouses and parents would have known. At this point, a sizable portion of scientists left the study. After a week of conversing with the deceased through his thoughts, the subject became distressed, saying the voices were overwhelming. In every waking moment, his consciousness was bombarded by hundreds of voices that refused to leave him alone. He frequently threw himself against the wall, trying to elicit a pain response. He begged the scientists for sedatives so that he could escape the voices by sleeping. This tactic worked for 3 days, until he started having severe night terrors. The subjects repeatedly said that he could see and hear the deceased in his dreams. Only a day later, the subject began to scream and claw at his non-functional eyes, hoping to sense something in the physical world. The hysterical subject now said that the voices of the dead were deafening and hostile, speaking of hell and the end of the world. At one point, he yelled, "No heaven, no forgiveness," 5 hours straight. He continually begged to be killed, but the scientists were convinced that he was close to establishing contact with God. After another day, the subject could no longer form coherent sentences. Seemingly mad, he started to bite off chunks of flesh from his arm. The scientists rushed into the test chamber and restrained him to a table so he could not kill himself. After a few hours of being tied down, the subject halted his struggling and screaming. He stared blankly at the ceiling as teardrops silently streaked across his face. For 2 weeks, the subject had to be manually rehydrated due to the constant crying. Eventually, he turned his head and, despite his blindness, made focused eye contact with the scientist for the first time in the study. He whispered, "I have spoken with God. and he has abandoned us. And his vital signs stopped. There was no apparent cause of death. Hey, that's a pretty good one too. How did he poop? My dude, he had the whole catheter. He was in a science lab. He had the catheter and bedpan set up. He was like ready to go. They manually rehydrated him and manually dehydrated him as well. Also, good morning, Mrs. Anzu. Good morning, William. Sorry to wake you. Ick. Well, I did like that one. I like these kind of existential ones. But maybe we should do a sillier one, like Zalgo, right? He comes. 13 minutes of reading. We can try it. It is a famous creepypasta. Zalgo is the text thing, right? Zalgo font. Yeah. Forgive the length of this message. This is the first and possibly last time I'll have access to a computer. I request Slenderman and/or the Russian sleep experiment. They are both on the list. First and last time I'll have access to a computer, so I thought I'd better write all this down while I can and get it to those who should know. I'm leaving town. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just getting as far away as I can. Okay, so some of you may know, I took out a loan and opened my own auto shop a little over a year ago. Business had been going decently well. I can't complain. And I've always been grateful to all of my customers who would come to me exclusively when, God knows, there are so many already established places in town. I've been doing well enough that I was able to hire my buddy Neil a few months ago, and he's been working hard and helping out really well, as I always knew he would. Well, I needed to take a day and go to a Lamaze class with Rebecca last month, so I entrusted the shop to Neil for the morning and most of the afternoon. That's the day I think everything actually started, because when I got back, he seemed to be in a stupor, and he was covered in oil. He'd even had some smeared across his face as he tried to drink it or something. I told him to go home and clean himself up because we had no clients at the moment and I could take care of anyone who came in for the time being. Well, he came back 45 minutes later, but he was still much quieter than usual. He worked as well as he ever did, but something just seemed off about him. I asked him if anything had happened while I was out, and he just shook his head. I asked how many clients we had, and he just muttered something unintelligible. I asked him to repeat himself, and he turned and glared at me. And for the briefest moment, I could have swore his eyes appeared to be completely black. No iris, no sclera, just utter, all-consuming blackness. I stumbled back and bumped a shelf, knocking things down. When I looked back at him, he was still looking at me, but he didn't seem to be glaring hatefully the way he had before, just seemed kind of out of it. Just a couple, he answered. Some woman and then a tattooed biker type looking dude. I assume one of them must have asked for an oil change, and that's when he spilled it. So I asked if he had any trouble, and he simply shrugged. I looked around the garage while he was gone and saw no traces of an oil spill. So whatever happened, he must have gotten it all on himself and none of it anywhere else, miraculously. But he seemed reluctant to talk about it. So I didn't press the issue, and we worked on throughout the day. That day and the next were relatively normal, other than him still being awkward and quiet. I asked him if he'd like to go out and get us lunch while I tended the shop, and he said, sure. When he came back, I was busy doing a diagnostic for a client, so he put the food on the counter in the office to wait for me, and he went ahead and ate. I finished up with that customer. We'd have to keep her car overnight to figure out just why it kept dying on her. So I asked Neil to give her a ride home, and then I went to grab my food. He brought me some Chinese food and an iced tea, so I opened the soy sauce packets to pour some over my food when I noticed the strangest thing. It was as if the soy sauce was a living thing somehow, spreading out like dozens of squirming, inky black maggots when it fell into the fried rice and burying itself inside. I took the fork and started to scoop out the rice to look deeper inside, and small smoky tendrils would rise from the rice occasionally and dissipate. I was incredibly hungry at that point, but I was way too creeped out to eat that, so I chucked it, and the iced tea, in the garbage, and decided I'd just wait till I get home that evening to eat something I prepare with my own hands. Never in my life seen anything remotely like that, and I couldn't even fathom how I would ask Neil if he'd noticed anything similar. As cold and distant as he'd been lately, I'm sure he'd look at me like I was Looney Tunes, so I just shut up about it. That Friday, we went down to the old watering hole, as we always do, to get some drinks and watch local bands play, and Neil was just as quiet and distant as he had been all week. He's not a bad-looking fellow, though, and so despite him not really going out of his way to speak to anyone, a woman went over to where he was sitting and started talking to him. And they ended up leaving together that night. Monday morning, I tried breaking the ice by asking how his weekend went. He gave me a nod and muttered, "All right." I asked him if he got lucky with that young woman I saw him with. He gave me the smallest grin, which was quite possibly the first grin I'd seen on his face in a week, and said, "It went well." I didn't pressure him for details. I knew he'd share if he chose to, and his small grin was enough to assuage my worries and lend me some hope that he might get back to his old self soon. The day was relatively busy until about 3 p.m., when I finally had a spare moment to sit in the office and listen to the radio while I waited on the next client. So there I was, leaning back in my chair with my feet propped up on my desk as I swiveled around and looked at my bulletin board that sits behind my head. All manner of clippings stuck to it. I had a few Sunday comic strips such as Garfield and Calvin and Hobbes that I'd read maybe 100 times since I'd opened shop there. But that day something was different. The first panel seemed normal, but in each subsequent panel, inky black tendrils crept out from the edges of the frame and from behind the characters. Blood dripped from the ears and eyes, and sometimes their noses, and in each of the strips, one of the characters would say, "He comes." I sat staring in astonishment for a moment before I realized the tendrils were moving ever so slowly, and then each of the characters' heads turned ever so slowly towards me, and I threw myself back away from the bulletin board, sliding over my desk and onto the floor. I ran out into the garage and yelled for Neil. I could not be the only one to see this. To my surprise, he had gone, so I hesitantly walked back to the office and peered inside. The comics were still corrupted, but they were no longer appearing to be moving. I crept over to them and reached out to pluck one of the comics free when I noticed the inky black tendrils starting to seep across the page towards where my fingers were, at least 3 times as fast as they moved before, and I jerked my hand away. Nothing good could possibly come from letting that blot of ink touch my skin. Of course, I ripped the entire bulletin board down, burned it in a tin trash can out back, and never spoke of it again. That night I went home and my wife was already in bed, fast asleep. My mind was racing, and I couldn't even bring myself to eat dinner that night. With no one to vent my worries to, I fell into a restless sleep, kept awaking to nightmare after nightmare, seemingly every hour of the night, until I just gave up on sleep entirely. That night, I went to the bar again, even though my wife couldn't drink, being pregnant and all, and Neil wasn't really any fun to hang with anymore, and none of my other friends could seem to be reached. I just needed to get a good buzz and I'd start feeling better, I reckoned. After downing a couple of beers, I excused myself to the restroom when I noticed I was more inebriated than I'd estimated. So I leaned over to the sink, splashed some water on my face, and that's when I heard it. Like a sheet of fabric being dragged across the floor, a voice rasped ever so quietly out of the drain. It sounded like a prolonged exhale for the longest time until I finally recognized words hidden among all those vowels. He comes. Cracks appeared in the porcelain, snaking out from the ring around the drain. At least they looked like cracks at first, but after a few seconds I recognized them as the same tendrils of corruption I'd seen in the comics earlier that week, snaking their way slowly along. I stumbled backwards out of the bathroom door and right into someone's chest. I turned around and stared up into the pitch black eyes of a 6.5-foot biker with tattoos covering every piece of exposed skin besides his hands and head. I stumbled quickly away from him, and his evil, piercing gaze followed me as I retreated through the bar. It felt like a dream, where wherever you're running for your life, it feels like running through quicksand. As I walked across the room, I noticed the biker wasn't the only one staring at me. It seemed every pair of eyes in the place were focused on me, and more than half of those eyes appeared to be perfectly black, with no hint of iris or sclera. A few lips moved, and though I couldn't hear their voices over the sound of the jukebox, I could easily guess what they were saying. He comes. I didn't get a wink of sleep that night. I haven't been getting much sleep for the past couple of weeks, as a matter of fact, which I'm guessing those of you who've spoken to me recently could have guessed. I keep seeing those pitch black eyes staring at me. I'm afraid everyone I see will turn and whisper those words to me, staring deep into my soul with that evil glare. Every time I go near a sink or go to grab a bite to eat, I'm afraid I'll see those inky, snaking tendrils squiggling towards me. Even my wife has seemed cold and distanced lately. Then tonight, as I'm driving home from work, struggling to keep my eyes open so that I wouldn't drift into oncoming traffic, my cell phone rang, and it was Rebecca. She was on her way to the hospital to have our baby, and for the first time in 2 weeks, I was actually happy. She was in the labor room, strapped to a monitor when I got there, watching for contractions. She barely noticed when I walked in, but didn't seem startled when I sat down beside her and took her hand in mine. I tried talking to her, but she was unresponsive. And I was so tired I didn't even realize that I had started to drift off to sleep until the nurses came in and started moving her to the delivery room about half an hour later. I put on my scrubs and a hairnet and went in with her to hold her hand and coach her through like they trained us in Lamaze. But she started cursing and screaming. I was prepared for that, as well as her ever-tightening grip on my hand. When I saw the movement in her tummy, my mind started to reel. The doctor said the baby was crowning and told her to push. I echoed his orders, and she screamed at me with a voice I couldn't begin to describe. When I looked down at her, she was staring up at me with those same eyes I'd seen on the biker. The same eyes I thought I'd seen on Neil weeks before. I tried to jerk my hand away, but she maintained her grip. Black, tar-like blood splashed the front of the doctor's scrubs, but he seemed to pay no heed. When I looked at her tummy again, black veins seemed to stand out beneath her skin, pulsating. She continued to stare at me. She was no longer screaming, just grinning, those obsidian eyes boring into me.
To invoke the Nesperidian hive mind of chaos,
He breathed in a raspy voice.
he who waits behind the wall.
The doctor continued as he stared down at the child, my child, lying silently cradled in his blood-stained hands. He looked up and raised the baby, and it appeared to be covered in oozing, inky black liquid, much like that had covered Neil a couple weeks prior. It did not cry out, but was alive, and it moved when he held it up. When its eyes opened, they were as black as my wife's, as black as the doctor's. In unison, they all breathed his name.
Salgo.
I ripped my hands free of my wife's iron grip and stumbled out of the room, barreling into the nurses passing in the corridor just outside. When I stood up and looked back into the room, I could see the inky black tendrils seeming to extend from the doctor and my newborn across the floor to where I stood. I turned and ran down the hall to the elevator and slammed my fingers on the buttons. When I looked back, the tendrils had come into the hallway. Yet no one else seemed to notice until it slithered over their feet and up their legs, at which point they abruptly stopped, turned, and looked at me with those same obsidian eyes. I abandoned my effort to call the elevator and broke into a panicked run for the stairs. I ran down the 15 flights of stairs all the way to the lobby, tore ass out into the parking lot, hopped in my car, and started driving. I didn't know where the fuck I was going. I just had to get the fuck away from there. I don't know if I'm going crazy. It certainly seems like it. But I just can't be around anyone I know anymore. They all have those same eyes, and those same dead stares, and even my child. Oh God, my baby. I still saw those eyes staring at me from the cars beside me. And by some strange coincidence, the same biker from the previous Friday night at the bar pulled up beside me an hour away from the hospital and followed me for nearly 2 miles. He'd turn and stare at me, grinning. I couldn't see his eyes through his sunglasses this time, but I knew it was the same guy. His tattoos seemed to move of their own free will. The flaming skull on his right bicep began bleeding from its eye sockets. As soon as I could, I slammed on my brakes, allowing him to fly past me as I swerved to my left and did a U-turn. I think I lost him. That was about an hour ago. I'm at a motel 3 hours out of town. The first place I found that has Wi-Fi. I'm tired, and I'm shaking. My hand itches where my wife's nails scratched me open. I honestly don't know what to do, or who I can turn to. This story will sound insane, and I'll probably be institutionalized, and I'm not sure that wouldn't be the best thing for me. But I just can't bear to look into those eyes anymore. Every time I see someone new and they stare at me, I start to panic because I know. I just know it's out there, looking for me, whatever it is. Good morning, I love wholesome games. And every time I lay down and start to drift off to sleep, I hear those words. He comes. You caught us just at the end of the Zalgo story, which I'd never heard before, although I knew all about this font. Look at this font, though. It's a cool font. I think you can download it, or there's like a Zalgo font creator. It's kind of become a famous internet meme. Creepy. Yes, it's all creepypastas, but I appreciate you stopping by. What was the game you were playing the other day? I wanted to recommend it to my wife. She's in chat right now. But I can't remember the name of it. It looked really wholesome, even though it was just a demo. Garden Life Sim. Yeah, looked really good. Very cute. Shall we read the candle check? 1 minute of reading. In this world, there exists a spirit neither male nor female. Non-binary. Nice. This spirit is covered with a dark cloth, with a separate white cloth to cover its head. It is said to carry an enormous brown burlap sack in which it holds its victims. It is said that the second its name has been called out, either directly or indirectly, the person is collected and becomes the property of the spirit. Many who have witnessed its appearance have been said to have gone insane and were later found with their eyes gouged out. The spirit is very, very real, and failure to prevent the mention of its name will cause Candlejack to come and whisk you away. Okay, I'm back. I knew I had to do something for that one. That's another famous one. The cool thing about I Love Wholesome Games is that she's from Texas and living in Sweden. Is that right? I remember you mentioning that. All right. Are you ready for the One of the most famous creepypastas of all time. Memed Atuda. You live in Stockholm. Oh, nice. I hear that is a wonderful city. All right. I had recently spawned a new world in single-player Minecraft. Everything was normal at first, as I began chopping down trees and crafting a workbench. I noticed something move amongst the dense fog. I have a very slow computer, so I have to play with a tiny render distance. I thought it was a cow, so I pursued it, hoping to grab some hides for armor. It wasn't a cow, though. Looking back at me was another character with the default skin, but his eyes were empty. I saw no name pop up, and I double-checked to make sure I wasn't in multiplayer mode. He didn't stay long. He looked at me and quickly ran into the fog. I pursued out of curiosity, but he was gone. I continued on with the game, not sure what to think. As I expanded the world, I saw things that seemed out of place for the random map generator to make. 2x2 tunnels in the rocks, small, perfect pyramids made out of sand in the ocean, and groves of trees with all their leaves cut off. I would constantly think I saw the other player deep in the fog, but I never got a better look at him. I tried increasing my render distance too far whenever I thought I saw him, but it was no avail. I saved the map and went on the forums to see if anyone else had found this pseudo player. There were none. I created my own topic, telling of the man and asking if anyone had any similar experiences. The post was deleted within 5 minutes. I tried again, and the topic was deleted even faster. I received a PM from user Herobrine containing one word: stop. When I went to look at Herobrine's profile, the page forwarded. I received an email from another forum user. He claimed the mods can read the forum user message, so we were safer using email. The emailer claimed that he had seen the mystery player too, and had a small directory of other users who had seen him as well. Their worlds were littered with obviously man-made features as well, and described their mystery player to have no pupils. About a month passed until I heard from my informant again. Some of the people who had encountered the mystery man had looked into the name Herobrine and had found that to be frequently used by a Swedish gamer. After some further information gathering, it was revealed to be the brother of Notch, the game's developer. I personally emailed Notch and asked him if he had a brother. It took him a while, but he emailed me back with a very short message. I did, but he is no longer with us. Notch. I haven't seen the mystery man since our first encounter, and I haven't noticed any changes to the world other than my own. I was able to press print screen when I first saw him. Here's the only evidence of his existence. And there's the image. An upsized version of the image attached to the original post. A player-like figure is just barely visible left of the hill past the fog. The chicken does not seem to react to its presence. They don't do snow days in Sweden? What the hell? You know, I guess if you're used to it, right? The reason that there are snow days in America is because they're not used to it all the time. Nope, you just gotta trudge out in that business. Woohoo! Okay, so before moving to Sweden, make sure you have a job that a job that is remote work only. But they have great infrastructure for it. They actually plow and salt the roads. Ah, yeah, see, they don't do that in in Texas. All right, let's do a, there's a few. Let's do a request. By the highest rating. The Russian sleep experiment. 16 minutes of reading. Or 12 minutes of reading. I guess there's some additional material. Okay, why are we reading an overview? Yes, the most popular and widest spread creepypastas ever written, blah, 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 blah. It's valid or debunked as a hoax, blah, blah, blah. We don't need a summary of it, we're just gonna read it. The Russian sleep experiment. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they had only microphones and 5-inch thick glass, porthole-sized windows into the chambers to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, cots to sleep on but no bedding, running water and toilet, and enough dried food to last all 5 for over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised, falsely, that they would be freed if they submitted to the test and did not sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that they continued to talk about increasingly traumatic incidents in their past, and the general tone of their conversations took on a darker aspect after the 4-day mark. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that had led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternately whispering to the microphones and one-way mirrored portholes. Oddly, they all seemed to think they could win the trust of the experimenters by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected this was an effect of the gas itself. Wouldn't that kill them? I thought people could only go like 5 days without sleep. Yeah, I think this is, expanded fiction. This experimental gas is keeping them alive, so to speak. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the full length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers postulated that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about his behavior is how the other captives reacted to it, or rather didn't react to it. They continued whispering to the microphones until the second captive started to scream. The 2 non-screaming captives took the books apart, smeared page after page with their own feces, and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes. The screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. Suspend disbelief. Yeah, I mean, it's a scary story. It's not meant to be logicked. It's meant to be felt. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were still working, since they thought it was impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they would not do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke any response from the captives they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, We're opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor, or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom. To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice respond. We no longer want to be freed. Debate broke out among the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more response using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed out of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately the voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for the life of loved ones, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state of any of them in life. The food rations past day 5 had not so much as been touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects' thighs and chests stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 of the surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all of them, were self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the ribcage of all 4 test subjects had been removed. While the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place, the skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the ribcage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract of all 4 could be seen to be working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still many refused to return to the chamber and remove the test subjects. They continued to scream to be left in the chamber and alternately begged and demanded that the gas be turned back on, lest they fall asleep. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 soldiers lost their lives, if you count the ones that committed suicide in the weeks following the incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured, and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of a morphine derivative and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When his heart was seen to beat for a full 2 minutes after he had bled out to the point where there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach and just repeating the word "more" over and over, weaker and weaker, until he finally fell silent. All hail to mighty Sir Ilith, the story reader of the Cryptic Ruins, wanderer of blood and water or teeth. Blood or water and teeth. This is creepy. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility, the 2 with intact vocal cords continuously begging for the gas, demanding to be kept awake. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found that he was effectively immune to the sedative they had given him to prepare him for the surgery. He fought furiously under his restraints when the anesthetic gas was brought out to put him under. He managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier was holding that wrist as well. It only took a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal levels of oxygen. His muscles were still attached to his skeleton and were badly torn, and he had 9 broken bones in his struggle to not be subdued. Most of them were from the force of his own muscles that his own muscles had exerted on him. Kind of want to bite my arm. Right? Feels weird. The second survivor had been the first of the group of 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed, he was unable to beg or to object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. You fiend. He shook his head yes when someone suggested reluctantly that they tried the surgery without anesthetic, and did not react the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and then attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding stated repeatedly that it should be medically possible for the patient to be still alive. One terrified nurse assisted the surgery, stating that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever his eyes met hers. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming that this must be something of dramatic importance, the surgeon had a pen and pad fetched so that the patient could write his message. It was simple: keep cutting. Thank you for the clip. The other 2 test subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of the operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their system in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the stimulant gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves, why they had ripped out their own guts, and why they wanted to be given the gas again. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced, and they were placed back into the chamber, awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of the military benefactors for having failed the stated goals for their project, considered euthanizing the surviving subjects. Happy Halloween! The commanding officer, a former KGB agent, instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip they were going back on the gas. It was obvious at this point all 3 were putting up with a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might. First left, then right, then left, again, for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly. Having been the first to be wired for EEG, most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves and supplies. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined inexplicably. It looked as though he was repeatedly suffering from brain death before returning to normal. As they focused on paper scrolling out at the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyes slip shut at the moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of a deep sleep, and then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flatlines as one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects aside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed his gun at the remaining subject, still restrained to a bed as the remaining members of the medical research team fled the room. I won't be locked in there with these things, not with you, he screamed as the man strapped to the table. What are you? He demanded. I must know. The subject smiled. Have you forgotten so easily? The subject asked. We are you. We are the madness that works within you all, begging to be free at every moment in your deepest animal minds. We are what you hide from in your beds every night. We are what you sedate into silence and paralysis when you go into the nocturnal haven where we cannot tread. The researcher paused, then aimed at the subject heart and fired. The EEG flatlined as the subject weakly choked out. So nearly, we. Well, I haven't heard this ending, it's too cheesy. Yeah, a lot of the other endings so far have been excellent. That one's a little cheesy. Anything's cheesy with that accent? True. I hope that 5 minutes of ooh-woo was possibly the best 5 minutes of ooh-woo of all time, right? It was way less scary that way. Legit. I mean, we're only an hour in. We've got a lot of reading to do. What's the other one? Slenderman. Yep, let's read Slenderman. Slenderman, The Other Request, by my dear wife. The Slenderman? There it is again. What is that thing? I can't take this anymore. It's like everywhere I go, all I see is this horrible, tall, thin, and seemingly faceless creature. It's been haunting my dreams as well, ever since I first saw it. Well, it doesn't stand there and watch me. I can't shake this constant feeling of being watched. It's like I'm never alone. I hate it. I can't sleep. I can't go outside. And I can't function as a normal person anymore without it being there. I've done a lot of research on it in the last couple days, Googling what I can best describe it as. All I could remember was it being an impossibly tall, thin man. I say impossibly because no human could be that height and that thin. It's just not goddamn natural. I tried my best to remember its face. I figured that would help narrow the search, but there wasn't one. I have no memory of seeing this thing's face. It was always just a blur. But then, I could never look at it long enough without feeling uneasy. I usually just walked in the other direction or something. Or if it was a dream, or a nightmare at that, I would always wake up before I could get a clear look. Well, the search provided me with something called the Slender Man. Which is apparently a different creepypasta. No, this is just like a wiki page. What the fuck is a Slender Man? This mythical creature is the thing that's been stalking me? No, it can't be. I refuse to believe it. I've not left my house in 2 days. I've been held up reading all these Slenderman stories and accounts. Needless to say, sleep has eluded me for the duration. Nothing's going right anymore. I think I've angered it by not letting it in my dreams. I keep hearing banging on the windows late at night and creaking of the floorboards as I'm lying in bed. I know they say houses do that on their own, but this is different. The creaks aren't that of the house settling. There's weight behind them, but soft footsteps. However, every time I go to look, there's nothing there. But when I re-enter my room, I always get the sensation I'm being watched. Tell me, have you ever been sitting in a room by yourself, windows and doors closed, when suddenly the door opens for no reason? I think everyone has, but I'm different. I swear it's not the draft. I've had all the windows locked for about a week now. I'm not one to believe in ghosts or anything of the sort, but this just has an eerie feel to it. Whenever the door spontaneously opens, it gets noticeably colder in the room. The second I leave the room, however, all the other rooms are back to normal. So it's not like my thermostat's on the brink. On the brink. On the blink. Any room, however, except my own. My room has been getting cold recently. Real cold. I resorted to lighting candles all around the room to try and heat the place up. I don't know what's happening. I'm starting to lose it. I went out for the first time in over a week today. I thought maybe my delusions were coming from being cooped up and spending too much time scaring myself, reading about the Slenderman. I went through my day-to-day life as best I could, and to my surprise, no sightings of that thing. Everything was going fine, in fact. I was starting to forget the whole thing. That is until I was heading home. I was walking through the woods, trying to take in as much fresh air as possible before I went home, when I stumbled across a piece of paper lying there on the middle of the footpath. I'd normally have just written it off to be some litter left by someone, but it was crisp white. It looked like it had been carefully placed there, no longer than perhaps 20 minutes ago. I picked it up and turned it over. It was a drawing of that thing, the Slender Man, a very crude sketch depicting him with the words "no, no, 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 no" scribbled down the sides of the page. As I tried to decipher the page, the clouds quickly darkened, turning to a heavy black. I'd best get home quick before the rain hits, I thought to myself. Now I'm home, sitting, staring at this fucking picture, going out of my mind, trying to figure out just how it got to where it was, thinking about how new it looked, and how wondering what sick fuck drew this and left it there for me. I'm just gonna go to bed. I'd be as well to get some sleep. I swear that picture's cursed. Slenderman was in my dream again last night. It seemed so real. I was lying in my bed in the dream, and I had woken up and seen him standing there in the corner of my room. I tried to scream, move, do anything, but I couldn't. I lay there, frozen in fear, wondering what would happen. He just lifted his arm and stretched it a good 10 feet to the headboard of my bed and rested his hand. I say hand, but they didn't feel like hands, more like tendrils, over my eyes, and I went back to sleep. When I woke up, there was nothing. A fucked up dream. Oh, and do you know what else has been happening since I brought that picture home? My electronics have been fucking up. My laptop shuts down on its own, even with full battery. My TV randomly turns to static. My phone keeps getting no reception. Along with the opening of doors, the constant sound of footsteps at night, you get the picture. I'm burning it tonight. I'm taking out the back and setting the fucker alight. No. No. This can't be happening. I watched that get burned last night. I took that piece of paper outside last night and watched it burn. Could it be back? What kind of twisted bastard would put a duplicate copy through someone's mailbox? This really isn't funny. I can't even phone for help because my electronics won't stop acting up, and I'm too paranoid to leave the house. I don't know what to do. Things are getting too much to cope with now. Day after day, more and more of those damn pictures keep coming through. Nothing works in the house, and I keep thinking I'm seeing him in the house. Whenever I leave the room, I think I catch a glimpse of him on my peripheral vision, or in the corner of a mirror I pass by. It's driving me insane. Has this thing really invaded my home? If so, there's no safety to be had. If it can get me here, it can get me anywhere. Doesn't mean I won't go down without a fight, though. Okay. I've locked my doors and all the windows and took enough food and water from the kitchen to last me about a week. I'm going to hole up in my room for as long as possible. I don't feel safe outside, nor do I feel safe in my own home. This is my last resort. I know he's got something sinister in store for me. I just know it. Why else would he go to such lengths to scare me to the brink of my sanity? Well, I barricaded myself in my room for now. Nothing's getting in here without my say-so. It's getting late. I'm gonna try to get some shut-eye. Shit, what was that? I swear I heard something move. It must have, because it woke me up. This is no ordinary footstep that I heard at the beginning of this. No, that was a loud and deliberate thud. It must be messing with me. The Slenderman knows I'm here. I would get up out of bed and turn the light on. There's no point. He's been messing with the electrics. I lay here scared out of my mind, staring into total darkness. I know this sounds crazy, but have you ever seen a darker shade of black than normal? Like when you're in a dark room with only a little light? Crowd time. like when you're in a dark room with only a little light and everything casts a shadow. Some shadows seem darker than the others. I swear, even though I'm currently in near dark blindness, that corner is darker than the rest. It's the same corner that was in my last nightmare. It's like the darkness is moving. My night vision is getting better now. I can see in a little more detail. Oh no. No. I can see the outline of a man form in that corner. A really tall, thin man. It looks like he's wearing a suit. Oh God, it's him. He's here, just like in my dreams. I lay here frozen in fear, wondering what's about to happen. He lifts his arm and stretches it across my room and over to my head. He rests his hands. No, these aren't hands. These are tendrils on my forehead. I thought about grabbing his arm and trying to push away, or getting up out of bed and trying to break down the door, but something told me there's no use. Nothing would help me now. His tendrils grew in length and snaked down my entire body, slowly wrapping themselves around me into some sort of blackened cocoon. Before I could scream, the blackness reached my face and covered my mouth. As it enveloped my head, the last thing to be covered was my eyes, which were firmly shut the whole time. I decided to open them one last time. I looked directly up, and he was there, standing directly over me, looking down. That was the last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me. Although he has no face, I swear, he seemed to smile. Pretty good. Oh, the back rooms. Read part 1 here. 29 minutes of reading. That is plenty of creepy for me right now. Have a creepy stream. Okay, bye. I mean, listen. I know where the backrooms come from. It's like the idea that there is this behind the scenes of reality sort of place where all the things that are left over from the universe are created. It was already creepy. You didn't have to add monsters to it. Let's see if we can read how has Jeff the Killer. There's another famous one. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, we don't really need the background stuff. It's just spoilers. We haven't even read the story yet. We gotta read the story first. But yeah, this is one of those stories that has like huge internet history built into it. I believe Internet Historian even did a reading of this story in his usual like cut and pasted edited style, which honestly, his Internet Historian's great. Love that guy. Hope he does more videos someday. All right. Jeff the Killer. Maybe I should, like, set up, like, currently reading. This might be a long one. So why don't we make some... Why don't we make some text here? There we go. My name's Jeff. Jeff Pretty. Jeff is such a funny name. All right, time to read Jeff the Killer. Excerpt from a local newspaper. Ominous unknown killer is still at large. After weeks of unexplained murders, the ominous unknown killer is still on the rise. After little evidence has been found, a young boy states that he survived one of the killer's attacks and bravely tells the story. I had a bad dream and I woke up in the middle of the night, says the boy. I saw that for some reason the window was open, even though I remember it being closed before I went to bed. I got up and shut it once more. Afterwards, I simply crawled under my covers and tried to get back to sleep. That's when I had a strange feeling like somebody was watching me. I looked up and nearly jumped out of my bed. There, in the little ray of light illuminating from between my curtains, there were a pair of two eyes. These weren't regular eyes, they were dark, ominous eyes. They were bordered in black and just plain out terrified me. That's when I saw his mouth, a long, horrendous smile that made every hair on my body stand up. The figure stood there watching me. Finally, after what seemed like forever, he said it. A simple phrase, but said in the way only a madman could speak. He said, "Go to sleep." I let out a scream. That's what sent him at me. He pulled up a knife, aiming at my heart. He jumped on top of my bed. I fought him back. I kicked, I punched, I rolled around trying to knock him off me. That's when my dad busted in. The man threw the knife. It went into my dad's shoulder. The man probably would have finished him off. One of my neighbors hadn't alerted the police. They drove into the parking lot and ran towards the door. The man turned and ran down the hallway. I heard a smash like glass breaking. As I came out of my room, I saw the window that was pointing towards the back of my house was broken. I looked out of it to see him vanish into the distance. I can tell you one thing, I will never forget that face, those cold, evil eyes, and that psychotic smile. They will never leave my head. Police are still on the lookout for this man. If you see anyone that fits the description in this story, please contact your local police department. Jeff and his family had just moved into a new neighborhood. His dad had gotten a promotion at work, and they thought it would be best to live in one of those fancy neighborhoods. Jeff and his brother Lou couldn't complain, though. Jeff and Lou. A new, better house. What was not to love? As they were getting unpacked, one of their neighbors came by. "Hello," she said. "I'm Barbara. I live across the street from you. Well, just wanted to introduce myself and introduce my son." She turns and calls her son over. "Billy, these are our new neighbors." Billy said hi and ran back to play in his yard. "Well," said Jeff's mom, "I'm Margaret, and this is my husband Peter, and my two sons, Jeff and Lou." Why is Lou's name so different from Margaret, Peter, and Jeff? They each introduced themselves, and then Barbara invited them to her son's birthday. Jeff and his brother were about to object when their mother said that they would love to. When Jeff and his family are done packing, Jeff went up to his mom. "Mom, why would you invite us to some kid's party? If you haven't noticed, I'm not some dumb kid." "Jeff," said his mother, "we just moved here. We should show that we want to spend time with our neighbors. Now, we're going to that party, and that's final." Jeff started to talk, but then stopped himself. knowing that he couldn't do anything. Whenever his mom said something, it was final. He walked up to his room and plopped down on his bed. He sat there looking at the ceiling when suddenly he got a weird feeling. Not so much pain, but a weird feeling. He dismissed it as just some random feeling. He heard his mother call him down to get his stuff, and he walked down to get it. The next day, Jeff walked downstairs to get breakfast and got ready for school. As he sat there eating his breakfast, he once again got that feeling. This time it was stronger. It gave him a slight tugging pain, but he once again dismissed it. As he and Liu finished breakfast, they walked down to the bus stop. They sat there waiting for the bus, and then, all of a sudden, some kid on a skateboard jumped over them, only inches above their laps. They both jumped back in surprise. "Hey, what the hell?" The kid landed and turned back to them. He kicked his skateboard up and caught it with his hands. The kid seemed to be about 12, 1 year younger than Jeff. He wears an Aeropostale shirt and ripped blue jeans.
Well, looks like we got some new meat.
Suddenly, 2 other kids appeared. One was super skinny, and the other was huge.
Well, since you're here, I'd like you to introduce yourselves. Over there is Keith.
Jeff and Lou looked at the skinny kid. He had a dopey face that you would expect a sidekick to have.
And he's Troy.
They looked over at the fat kid. Talk about a tub of lard. This kid looked like he hadn't exercised since he was crawling.
And I,
said the first kid,
am Randy. Now, for all the kids in this neighborhood, there's a small price per bus fare, if you catch my drift.
Lou stood up, ready to punch the lights out of the kid's eyes, when one of his friends pulled a knife on him.
Tisk, tisk, tisk. I had hoped you would be more cooperative, but it seems we must do this the hard way.
The kid walked up to Lou and took his wallet out of his pocket. Jeff got that feeling again. Now it was truly strong, a burning sensation. He stood up, but Lou gestured him to sit down. Jeff ignored him and walked up to the kid.
Listen here, you little punk. Give my bro's wallet back or else.
Randy put the wallet in his pocket and pulled out his own knife.
Oh, and what will you do?
Just as he finished the sentence, Jeff popped the kid in the nose. As Randy reached for his face, Jeff grabbed the kid's wrist and broke it. Randy screamed, and Jeff grabbed the knife from his hand. Troy and Keith rushed Jeff, but Jeff was too quick. He threw Randy to the ground. Keith lashed out at him, but Jeff ducked and stabbed him in the arm. Keith dropped his knife and fell to the ground screaming. Troy rushed him too, but Jeff didn't even need the knife. He just punched Troy straight in the stomach, and Troy went down. As he fell, he puked all over. Lou could do nothing but look in amazement at Jeff. "Jeff, how do you?" was all he said. They saw the bus coming and knew that they'd be blamed for the whole thing. So they started running as fast as they could. As they ran, they looked back and saw the bus driver rushing over to Randy and the others. As Jeff and Lou made it to school, they didn't dare tell what happened. All they did was sit and listen. Lou just thought of that as his brother Lou just thought of that as his brother beating up a few kids, but Jeff knew it was more. It was something scary. As he got that feeling, he felt how powerful it was, the urge to just hurt someone. He didn't like how it sounded, but he couldn't help feeling happy. He felt that strange feeling go away and stay away for the entire day of school. Even as he walked home due to the whole thing near the bus stop, now he probably wouldn't be taking the bus anymore. He felt happy. When he got home, his parents asked him how his day was, and he said in a somewhat ominous voice,
"It was a wonderful day."
The next morning, he heard a knock at the front door. He walked down to find 2 police officers at the door, his mother looking back at him with an angry look. "Jeff, these officers tell me that you attacked 3 kids, that it wasn't regular fighting, and that they were stabbed. Stabbed, son." Jeff's gaze fell to the floor, showing his mother that it was true. "Mom, they were the ones who pulled the knives on me and Lou."
"Son," said one of the cops, "we found 3 kids, 2 stabbed, 1 having a bruise on his stomach, and we have witnesses proving that it was you who fled the scene. Now what does that tell us?"
Jeff knew it was no use. He could say him and Lou had been attacked, But then there was no proof it was not them who attacked first. And they couldn't say that they weren't fleeing because, truth be told, they were. So Jeff couldn't defend himself or Leo. Son, call down your brother. Jeff couldn't do it since it was he who beat up all the kids.
Sir, it was me. I was the one who beat up the kids. Lou tried to hold me back, but he couldn't stop me.
The cop looked at his partner and they both nod. Well, kid, looks like a year in juvie.
Wait,
Says Lou. They all looked up to see him holding a knife. The officers pulled their guns and locked them on Lou.
it was me. I beat up those little punks. I have the marks to prove it.
He had lifted up his sleeves to reveal cuts and bruises, as if he was in a struggle. Son, just put the knife down, said the officer. Lou held up the knife and dropped it to the ground. He put his hands up and walked over to the cops.
No, Lou, it was me. I did it.
Jeff had tears running down his face. Poor bro, trying to take the blame for what I did. Well, take me away. The police led Lou out to the patrol car.
Lou, tell them it was me. Tell them I was the one who beat up those kids.
Jeff's mother put her hands on his shoulder.
Jeff, please, you don't have to lie. We know it's Lou. You can stop.
Dang, they're so quick to throw Lou under the bus. Jeff watched helplessly as the cop car speeds off with Lou inside. A few minutes later, Jeff's dad pulled into the driveway, seeing Jeff's face and knowing something was wrong. Son, what is it? Jeff couldn't answer. His vocal cords were strained from crying. Instead, Jeff's mother walked his father inside to break the bad news to him, as Jeff wept in the driveway. After an hour or so, Jeff walked back into the house, seeing that his parents were both shocked, sad, disappointed. He couldn't look at them. He couldn't see how they thought of Lou when it was his fault. He just went to sleep, trying to get the whole thing off his mind. 2 days went by with no word from Lou at JDC. No friends to hang out with. Nothing but sadness and guilt. That is until Saturday, when Jeff is woken up by his mother with a happy, sunshiny face.
Jeff, it's the day.
She said as she opened up the curtains and let light flood into his room.
What? What's today?
Asked Jeff as he stirs awake.
Why, it's Billy's party.
He was now fully awake. Well, Mom, you're joking, right? You don't expect me to go to some kid's party after... There was a long pause.
Jeff, we both know what happened. Now, I think this party could be the thing that brightens up the past days. Now get dressed.
Jeff's mother walked up out of the room and downstairs to get ready herself. He fought himself to get up. Excuse me. He picked out a random shirt and a pair of jeans and walked downstairs. He saw his mother and father all dressed up. His mother in a dress and his father in a suit. He thought, why would they ever wear such fancy clothes to a kid's party?
Son, is that all you're going to wear?
Said Jeff's mom. Better than wearing too much, he said. His mother pushed down the feeling to yell at him and hit it with a smile. Now, Jeff, we may be overdressed, but this is how you go if you want to make an impression, said his father. Jeff grunted and went back up to his room.
I don't have any fancy clothes,
He yelled downstairs. Just pick out something, called his mother. He looked around in his closet for what he would call fancy. He found a pair of black dress pants he had for special occasions and an undershirt. He couldn't find a shirt to go with it, though. He looked around and found only striped and patterned shirts, none of which go with dress pants. Finally, he found a white hoodie and put it on. You're wearing that? They both said. His mother looked at her watch.
Oh, no time to change. Let's just go.
She said as she herded Jeff and his father out the door. They crossed the street over to Barbara and Billy's house. They knocked on the door, and at it appeared that Barbara, just like her parents, way overdressed. As they walked inside, all Jeff could see were adults, no kids.
The kids are out in the yard. Jeff, how about you go and meet some of them?
Said Barbara. Jeff walked outside to a yard full of kids. They were running around in weird cowboy costumes and shooting each other with plastic guns. He might as well have been standing in a Toys R Us. And he's 13 years old. He's too old for this shit. Suddenly, a kid came up to him and handed him a toy gun and hat.
Hey, wanna play?
He said.
No, kid. I'm way too old for this stuff.
The kid looked at him with that weird puppy dog face.
Please?
Said the kid. Fine, said Jeff. He put on the hat and started to pretend shoot at the kids. At first, he thought it was totally ridiculous, but then he started to actually have fun. It might not have been super cool, but it was the first time he had done something that took his mind off of you. So, he played with the kids for a while until he heard a noise. A weird rolling noise. Then it hit him. Randy, Troy, and Keith all jumped over the fence on their skateboards. Over the fence on their skateboards. They set up a ramp on the other side just in case. Jeff dropped the fake gun and ripped off the hat. Randy looked at Jeff with a burning hatred.
Hello. Jeff, is it?
He said.
We have some unfinished business.
Jeff saw his bruised nose.
I think we're even. I beat the crap out of you, and you get my brother sent to JDC.
Randy got an angry look in his eyes.
Oh no, I don't go for even, I go for winning. You may have kicked our asses that one day, but not today.
As he said that, Randy rushed at Jeff. They both fell to the ground. Randy punched Jeff in the nose, and Jeff grabbed him by his ears and headbutted him. Jeff pushed Randy off of him, and both rose to their feet. Kids were screaming, and parents were running out of the house. Troy and Keith both pulled guns out of their pants. Wait, what?
No one interrupts or guts will fly,
They said. Jesus. Randy pulled a knife on Jeff and stabbed it into his shoulder. Jeff screamed and fell to his knees. Randy started kicking him in the face. After 3 kicks, Jeff grabbed his foot and twisted it, causing Randy to fall to the ground. Jeff stood up and walked towards the back door. Troy grabbed him. Need some help? He picks Jeff up by the back of the collar and throws him through the patio door. As Jeff tries to stand, he is kicked down to the ground. Randy repeatedly starts kicking Jeff until he starts to cough up blood.
Come on, Jeff, fight me.
He picks Jeff up and throws him into the kitchen. Through the window. Dang. Randy sees a bottle of vodka on the counter and smashes the glass over Jeff's head.
Fight!
He throws Jeff back into the living room.
Come on, Jeff. Look at me.
Jeff glances up, his face riddled with blood.
I was the one who got your brother sent to JDC, and now you're just gonna sit here and let him rot there for a whole year. You should be ashamed.
Jeff starts to get up.
Oh, finally, you stand and fight.
Jeff is now on his feet, blood and vodka on his face. Once again, he gets that strange feeling, the one in which he hasn't felt it for a while.
Finally, he's up,
Says Randy as he runs at Jeff. That's when it happens. Something inside Jeff snaps. His psyche is destroyed. All rational thinking is gone. All he can do is kill. He grabs Randy and pile drives him into the ground. Get him! Randy Savage, more like. Wait, is everybody in this story named after pro wrestlers?
Oh, finally, you can get up and fight. Come on, Jeff, look at me. I was the one who sent your brother to the JDC. And now you're just gonna sit here and let him rot. You should be ashamed, brother.
He grabs Randy and pile drives him into the ground. He gets on top of him and punches him straight in the heart. The punch causes Randy's heart to stop. As Randy gasps for breath, Jeff hammers down on him, punch after punch. Blood gushes from Randy's body until he takes one final breath and dies. Everyone is looking at Jeff now. The parents, the crying kids, even Troy and Keith. Although they easily break from their great gaze and point their guns at Jeff. Just knew that, so Jeff sees the guns trained at him and runs for the stairs. As he runs, Troy and Keith let out fire at him, each shot missing. Jeff runs up the stairs. He hears Troy and Keith follow up behind. As they let out their final round of bullets, Jeff ducks into the bathroom. He grabs the towel rack and rips it off the wall. Troy and Keith race in, knives ready. Troy swings his knife at Jeff, who backs away and bangs the towel rack into Troy's face. Troy goes down hard, and now all that's left is Keith. He is more agile than Troy, though, and ducks when Jeff swings the towel rack. He dropped the knife and grabbed Jeff by the neck. He pushed him into the wall. A thing of bleach fell down on top of him from the top shelf. A thing of bleach. Top tier writing. A thing of bleach. It burnt both of them, and they both started to scream. Jeff wiped his eyes as best he could. He pulled back the towel rack and swung it straight into Keith's head. As he lay there, bleeding to death, he let out an ominous smile. "What's so funny?" asked Jeff. Keith pulled out a lighter and switched it on. "What's funny," he said, "is that you're covered in bleach and alcohol." Is bleach flammable? Hold up. Is bleach flammable? Bleach, which contains chlorine that's dissolved in water, is not flammable. However, it can react explosively or form explosive compounds with other chemicals such as turpentine or ammonia. Bleach reaction with... Does bleach react with alcohol? Bleach and rubbing alcohol create chloroform. Uh-huh. Okay. Is chloroform flammable? Chloroform is non-flammable. Okay. Zero chemistry is happening in this story. Jeff's eyes widened as Keith threw the lighter at him. As soon as the flame made contact with him, the flames ignited the alcohol in the vodka. Oh no. While the alcohol burned him, the bleach bleached his skin. Jeff let out a terrible screech as he caught fire. He tried to roll out the fire, but it was no use. The alcohol had made him a walking inferno. He ran down the hall and fell down the stairs. Everybody started screaming as they saw Jeff, now a man on fire, drop to the ground, nearly dead. The last thing Jeff saw was his mother and the other parents trying to extinguish the flame. That's when he passed out. When Jeff woke, he had a cast wrapped around his face. He couldn't see anything, but he felt a cast on his shoulder and stitches all over his body. He tried to stand up, but realized that there were some tubes in his arm. And when he tried to get up, it fell out, and a nurse rushed in. "I don't think you can get out of bed just yet," she said as she put him back in bed and reinserted the tube. Jeff sat there with no vision, no idea of what his surroundings were. Finally, after hours, excuse me. Finally, after hours, he heard his mother. "Honey, are you okay?" she asked. Jeff couldn't answer, though. His face was covered and he was unable to speak. "Oh, honey, I have great news. After all the witnesses told the police that Randy confessed to trying to attack you, they decided to let Lou go." This made Jeff almost bolt up, stopping halfway, remembering the tube coming out of his arm. "He'll be out by tomorrow, and then you two will be able to be together again." Jeff's mother hugs Jeff and says her goodbyes. The next couple of weeks, were those where Jeff was visited by his family. Then came the day where the bandages were to be removed. Pretty quick exposition here. His family members were all there to see it, what he would look like. As the doctors unwrapped the bandages from Jeff's face, everyone was on the edge of their seats. They waited until the last bandage holding the cover over his face was almost removed. "Let's hope for the best," said the doctor. He quickly pulls the cloth, letting the rest fall from Jeff's face. Jeff's mother screams at the sight of his face. Lou and Jeff's dad stare awestruck. His face. What happened to my face?" Jeff said. He rushed out of the bed and ran to the bathroom. He looked in the mirror and saw the cause of the distress. His face, it's horrible. His lips were burnt to a deep shade of red. His face was turned into a pure white color. His hair singed from brown to black. Wait a minute. So basically it looks like this guy. He basically looks like this guy. Let's read that again. Lips, deep shade of red. Face, pure white. Hair, singed brown or black. Okay, this is it. This is the face of Jeff the Killer. I want you to imagine this in your mind. Jeff the Killer. All right. He slowly put his hand to his face. It had a sort of leathery feel to it now. He looked back at his family and then back at the mirror. Jeff, said Leo, it's not that bad. Not that bad, said Jeff. It's perfect. His family was equally surprised. Jeff started laughing uncontrollably. His parents noticed that his left eye and hand were twitching. Jeff, are you okay? Okay, I've never felt more happy. Look at me, this face goes perfectly with me. He couldn't stop laughing. He stroked his face, feeling it, looking at it in the mirror. What caused this? Well, you may recall that when Jeff was fighting Randy, something in his mind, his sanity, snapped. Now he was left as a crazy killing machine. That is, his parents didn't know. That is such a weird-ass sentence structure. Doctor, said Jeff's mom, is my son all right, you know? In the head? Oh yes, this behavior is typical for patients that have taken very large amounts of painkillers. If his behavior doesn't change in a few weeks, bring him back here and we'll give him another psychological test. Oh, thank you, doctor. Jeff's mother went over to Jeff. Jeff, sweetie, it's time to go. Jeff looks away from the mirror. His face still formed into a crazy smile. Hey, Mommy. His mother took him by the shoulder and then took him to get his clothes. This is what came in, said the lady at the desk. Jeff's mom looked down to see the black dress pants and white hoodie her son wore. Now they were clean of blood and now stitched together. Jeff's mother led him to his room and made him put his clothes on. Then they left, not knowing that this was the final day of their life. Later that night, Jeff's mother woke to a sound coming into from the bathroom. It sounded as if someone was crying. She walked slowly over to see what it was. When she looked into the bathroom, she saw a horrendous sight. Jeff had taken a knife and carved a smile into his cheeks. Jeff, what are you doing? Asked his mother. Jeff looked over to his mother. I couldn't keep smiling, Mommy. It hurt after a while. Now I can smile forever. Jeff's mother noticed his eyes, ringed in black. Jeff, your eyes! His eyes were seemingly never closing. I couldn't see my eyes. I got tired and my eyes started to close. Or I couldn't see my face. I got tired and my eyes started to close. I burned out the eyelids so I could see myself forever. My new face. Jeff's mother slowly started to back away, seeing that her son was going insane. What's wrong, Mommy? Aren't I beautiful? Yes, son, she said. Yes, you are. Let me go get Dad so you can see your face. She ran into the room and shook Jeff's dad from his sleep. Honey, get the gun. She stopped as she saw Jeff in the doorway, holding a knife. Mommy, you lied. That's the last thing they hear as Jeff rushes them with a knife, gutting both of them. His brother Lou woke up, startled by some noise. He didn't hear anything else, so he just shut his eyes and tried to go back to sleep. As he was on the border of slumber, he got the strangest feeling that someone was watching him. He looked up before Jeff's hand covered his mouth. He slowly raised the knife, ready to plunge into Lou. Lou thrashed here and there, trying to escape Jeff's grip. Shh! Jeff said. Just go to sleep. And apparently there's a Jeff the Killer reboot. Looks like Randy is alive again, returns for some reason. So I guess this is the backstory behind the Jeff the Killer picture, right? Kind of silly. Yeah, it's pretty silly. It's pretty silly. All right, let's do another one. Lavender Town Syndrome. A classic, Lavender Town. The Lavender Town Syndrome, also known as Lavender Town Tone or the Lavender Town Suicides, was a peak of suicides and illness in children between the ages of 7 and 12, shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan, back in February 27, 1996. Wait, is a peak of suicides all on the same day? February 27th? Okay. Rumors say that these suicides and illnesses only occurred after the children playing the game reached Lavender Town, whose theme music had extremely high frequencies that studies showed that only children and young teens can hear since their ears are more sensitive. That is actually true. Due to the Lavender Tone, at least 200 children supposedly committed suicide, and many more developed illnesses and afflictions. The children who committed suicide usually did it so by hanging or jumping from heights. Those who did not act irrationally complained of severe headaches after listening to Lavender Town's theme. Although Lavender Town now sounds completely different depending on the game, the mass hysteria was caused by the first Pokemon game's release. After the Lavender Tone incident, the programmers had fixed Lavender Town's theme music to be at a lower frequency, and since then children were no longer affected by it. One video appeared in 2010 using special software to analyze the audio of Lavender Town's music. When played, the software created images of the unknown near the end of the audio. This raised a controversy since the unknown didn't appear until the Generation 2 games, Silver, Gold, and Crystal. The unknown translate to leave now. Oh yeah, original Japanese version. I mean, those are high frequencies. Okay, well, estimated reading time 1 minute indeed. That was a fast one. Let's see. Any others that I recognize? Rap Rat. The Rugrats theory. Oh, come on. Slenderman. Sonic.exe. Okay, we have to read this one. 24 minutes of reading? Okay. Sounds good. Currently reading. Sonic.exe. Wonderful. All right. Oh, it's so cheesy. It's so cheesy. There's a recent, I'm going to keep this as spoiler-free as I can. In One Piece, there was a recent power-up that Luffy went through called Gear 5th. Now, gears are his like power-ups. Each time he goes into a new gear, he uses his powers in new and interesting ways. So 5 is pretty powerful, right? 2, 3, and 4 were also very powerful. But I don't know how true this is, but there's like a rumor that there were some edgier fans that wanted him to not do Gear Fifth, but rather do like Gear Evil. Like, you killed my friends, time to go to Gear Evil, and become the edgy shonen protagonist that they want him to be, even though that is so not Luffy. Alright, let's go to the Sonic EXE Creepypasta story. I'm a total Sonic the Hedgehog fan, much like everyone else. I like the newer games, but I don't mind playing the classics. I don't think I've ever played glitchy or hacked games before, though. So I don't think I want to play, though I don't think I want to play any after the experience I had. It started on a nice summer afternoon. I was playing Sonic Unleashed. I like how you get to explore the towns in it. Until I noticed, out of my peripheral vision, that the mailman had arrived and put something in my mailbox as usual and left. I paused my game to go see what I got in the mail. The only thing in the mailbox was a CD case for computers and a note. I took it inside. I looked at the note first and realized it was from my dear friend Kyle. Let's just call him that. Whom I haven't heard from in 2 weeks. Good use of whom. I know that because I recognized his handwriting. Though what was weird is how it looked. It looked badly written and scratchy and somewhat difficult to read, as if Kyle was having a hard time writing it down, and did it in a hurry. This is what he wrote. Tom, I can't take it anymore. I had to get rid of this thing somehow before it was too late, and I was hoping you'd do it for me. I can't do it. He's after me, and if you don't destroy the CD, he'll come after you too. He's too fast for me. Too fast, you say? Too fast, you say? Please, Tom, destroy this godforsaken disc before he comes after you too. It's too late for me. Destroy the disc and you'll destroy him, but do it quick, otherwise he'll catch you. Don't even play the game. It's what he wants. Just destroy it. Please. Kyle. Well, that was certainly weird. Even though Kyle is my best friend and I hadn't seen him for 2 weeks, I didn't do what he asked me. I didn't think that a simple gaming disc would do anything bad to him. After all, it's just a game, right? Boy, was I wrong about that. Anyway, I looked at the disc, and it looks like any ordinary computer CDR disc, except it had black marker on it written Sonic.exe. And it was much unlike Kyle's handwriting, meaning that he must have gotten it from someone else, like a pawn shop or eBay. When I saw Sonic on the writing of the CD, I was actually excited and wanted to play it, since I'm a big Sonic fan. That's all it takes to honeypot these Sonic fans, I tell you what. Just literally the word Sonic, and they will ignore all warnings. I went up to my room and turned on my computer and put the disc in and installed the game. When the title screen popped up, I noticed that it was the first Sonic game. I was like, awesome, because like I said earlier, I like the classics. The first thing that I noticed that was out of place was when I pressed start. There was a split second when I saw the title image turn into something much different. Something I now consider horrifying, before cutting to black. I remember what the image looked like in that split second before the game cut to black. The sky had darkened. The title emblem was rusted and ruined. The Sega 1991 was now Sega 666, and the water had turned red like blood, except it looked hyper-realistic. But the freakiest thing of all was in that split-second frame was Sonic. His eyes were pitch black and bleeding, with two glowing red dots staring right at me, and his smile had stretched wider, up to the edge of his face. I was rather disturbed about that image when I saw it, though I figured that it was just a glitch and forgot about it. After it cut to black, it stayed like that for about 10 seconds or so. And then another weird thing happened. The save file from Sonic the Hedgehog 3 popped up. And I was like, what the fuck? What's this doing in a Sonic game? Anyway, then I noticed something off. The background was the dark cloudy sky of the Bad Stardust Speedway level from Sonic CD. And there were only 3 save files. The music was that creepy Caravans of Winter music from Earthbound, only it was extended and seemed to have been in reverse. And the image for the save file where you see a preview of the level you're on was just red static for all 3 files. It's just, take a look at this artist's depiction. That guy's 666. I don't know if this smile counts as going all the way up to the sides of his face. And this doesn't really look rusted, so to speak. Honestly, something that would have been better left to the imagination, I think. What freaked me out more was that the character selected only showed Tails, Knuckles, and to my surprise, Dr. Robotnik. Now I was sure that something was up. I mean, how can you play as Robotnik in a classic Sonic game, for crying out loud? That's when I realized that this wasn't a glitchy game. It was a hacked game. Yeah, it definitely looked hacked. It was really creepy, but as a smart gamer, I wasn't scared. Or at least I tried not to be. I told myself that it was just a hacked game, and there's nothing wrong with that. Anyways, shaking off the creeped out feeling, I picked file 1 and chose Tails and when I selected and got started. The game froze over for about 5 seconds, and I heard a creepy pixelated laugh that sounded an awful lot like that Kefka guy from Final Fantasy before cutting to black. This is just like 90s gamer fan fiction, really. 90s gamer reference. The screen stayed black for about 10 seconds or more. Then it showed the typical level title thing, except the simplistic shapes were different shades of red, and the text showed only Hill, Act 1. The screen faded in, and the title level vanished. The level title vanished, revealing Tails in the green hill zone from Sonic 1. The music was different, though. It sounded like a peaceful melody, in reverse. And reversing music obviously makes it evil. Anyway, I started playing and had Tails start running like you would in any of the classic Sonic games. What was odd was that as Tails was running along the level, there was nothing but flat ground and a few trees for 5 minutes. That was when the peaceful music started to lower down into slow, deep tones, very slowly, as I kept going. I saw suddenly something, and I stopped to see what it was. It was one of the small animals, lying dead on the ground bleeding. That was when the music started to slow down. Tails had a shocked and saddened look on his face that I had never seen him have before, and so I had him move along. And he kept that worried look on his face. As he kept moving, I saw more dead animals as Tails moved past them, looking more and more worried as the music lowers, and he moves past more dead animals. I was shocked to see how they all died. They looked like somebody killed them in rather gruesome ways. A squirrel was hanged on a tree, with what appeared to be its entrails hanging out. A bunny had all 4 of his limbs torn off, and a duck had his eyes gouged out and his throat slit. I felt sick to my stomach when I saw this massacre, and apparently so did Tails. After a few more seconds, there were no more animals, and the music seemed to have stopped. I still kept Tails to continue. After a minute passed after the music stopped, Tails was running up a hill, and then he stopped. It wasn't until I saw why. Sonic was there on the other side of the screen, with his back against Tails with his eyes closed. Tails looked happy to see Sonic, but then his smile faltered, obviously noticing that Sonic wasn't responding to him, if not acting as if he was totally oblivious to Tails' presence. Tails walked slowly towards Sonic, and I noticed that I wasn't even moving my keyboard to make him move, so this had to be a cutscene. Suddenly I began to have a growing feeling of dread as Tails walked closer to Sonic to get his attention. I felt that Tails was in danger, and something bad was going to happen. I heard faint static growing louder as Tails was but inches away from Sonic, and stopped and stuck his hand out to touch him. That foreboding feeling in my gut was growing stronger, and I felt the urge to tell Tails to get away from Sonic, as the static grew louder. Suddenly, in a split second, I saw Sonic's eyes open, and they were black with those red glowing dots, just like that title image, though there wasn't a smile. When that happened, the screen turned black, and the static sound was off. It stayed black for about 7 seconds, and then white text appeared forming a message saying, "Hello, do you want to play with me?" At this point, I was creeped out. I didn't want to continue with the game, but my curiosity got the better of me when I was taken to a different level with the title level now saying, "Hide and seek." This time I was in the Angel Island level from Sonic 3, and it looked like everything was on fire. Tails looked as though he was scared out of his wits this time. He actually looked at me and made frantic gestures to me, as if he wanted to get out of the area he was in as fast as possible. I was starting to get freaked out by this. I mean, Tails was actually breaking the fourth wall, trying to tell me to get him out of there. So I pressed down on the arrow key as hard as I could and made him run as fast as he could. A pixelated version of that creepy theme, When You Meet Shadow at the Ark as Robotnik from SA2 was playing, as I made Tails trek through the desolate forest, trying to help him escape from whatever he was trying to run from. Suddenly I heard that creepy laugh again, that awful Kefka laugh. Just a second. Can we look up what the Kefka laugh is? That's the Kefka laugh? Top comment. Whether you're here because of Final Fantasy or the Sonic.exe creepypasta, there's one thing we can't deny. That's one hell of a creepy laugh, like damn. Kefka is probably wondering why Demon Hedgehog stole his laugh. I mean, me too. I'm wondering. Right after 10 seconds have passed as I helped Tails run through the forest, and then I started seeing flashes of Sonic popping everywhere on the screen, again with those black and red eyes. The music changed to that suspenseful, drowning jingle as I see Sonic behind Tails, slowly gaining up on him, flying. Sonic wasn't running, he was actually flying. The flying pose his sprite was making looked very similar to Metal Sonic's flying pose in Sonic CD, except it was just Sonic, and he had the black and red eyes again. Only this time, he had the most deranged looking grin on his face. He looked as though he was enjoying the torment he was giving the poor little fox as he gained on him. Suddenly, when Tails tripped, another cutscene, the music stopped and Sonic vanished. Tails laid there and started crying for 15 seconds. The scene was rather upsetting to watch. I kind of teared up myself. But then Sonic appeared right in front of Tails, and Tails looked up in horror. Blood started to come down from those blackened eyes of Sonic's as a grin slowly grew on his face as he looked down at the horrified fox. I could do nothing but watch. Just in a split second, Sonic lunged at Tails right before the screen went black. There was a loud screeching noise that lasted only 5 seconds. The text returned, only this time it said, "You're too slow. Want to try again?" And then that god-awful laugh came with it. Whoop, 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 whoop. Whoop, 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 whoop. I was so shocked by what had happened. Did Sonic murder Tails? No, he couldn't have. He and Tails are supposed to be best friends, right? Why did Sonic do that to him? Oh my god. I can't. I shook the shock off as I was brought back to the character select. The save file that had Tails was different. Tails was no longer in the box itself, but on the TV screen itself, which was flickering with that red static. Tails' expression scared me. His eyes were black and bleeding, his orange fur had gone black, and he had an expression of anguish on his face. Trying to ignore it, I picked Knuckles next. The laugh came again. Boop, 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 boop. Boop, 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 boop. And the screen cut to black again and stayed there for another 10 seconds. This time the level said, "You can't run." I haven't actually played Final Fantasy VI. Kefka, right? Should we do a Kefka's Laugh redeem? It's probably in line with my audience's experiences, but I haven't played the game, so I need to play Chrono Trigger as well. I was really freaked out by now. I couldn't really tell if this was a glitch or a hack or some kind of sick, twisted joke or anything really. But despite my fear of what happened next, I kept playing. The next level looked much different. It had the ground of the scrap brain zone, but the sky background looked like the main menu. It had the dark, reddish, cloudy sky. But it was the music that creeped me out the most. It sounded like Gygas' theme right after you beat Pokey in Earthbound. I also noticed that Knuckles looked afraid, just like Tails did. Though not as much. More rather, he looked a little unnerved. He broke the fourth wall just like Tails, and looked as if he wasn't sure about going on, but I made him move anyway. He ran straight down the pathway into this dark level. And as he did, the screen started to flicker, red static a couple times, and then that maddening laugh came again. Then after a few seconds of running, I noticed several bloodstains on the metallic ground. I felt a growing sense of fear again, thinking something horrible is going to happen. Going to happen to Knuckles. Whew. Reading always gives me the yawns. I don't know why. He looked nauseated walking down this blood-stained road, but still, I kept him going. Suddenly, as Knuckles ran, Sonic appeared right in front of him, with those black and red eyes, and then red static appeared again. When the static vanished, showing nothing but black screen and text saying, "Found you." I was now scared. Sonic found Knuckles already? What was going on? Anyway, red static came again, and then I was back to the level. Knuckles looked like he was panicking, and Sonic was nowhere to be found. And this time that high-pitched squealing from the Silent Hill 1's final boss was playing. Man, whoever made this ROM hack has quite a diverse taste in music. 90s game reference. Was this some kind of boss battle with Sonic? Hope to God it wasn't, honestly. Suddenly, Sonic appeared right behind Knuckles, what appeared to be pixelated black smoke. I made Knuckles turn and then punch Sonic, but Sonic vanished in black pixelated smoke. Oh, which is different than pixelated black smoke. Before I could even land a hit, that terrible laugh went off again. Then Sonic appeared behind Knuckles again, and I made him punch him again, and Sonic vanished again laughing. Knuckles was panicking even more. Even I felt like I was going crazy. Sonic was practically playing with us. He was playing a sick, twisted little mind game with me and Knuckles. Another cutscene played as Knuckles fell to his knees and clutched his head sobbing. I felt his agony. Sonic was actually driving us both crazy. And then in a split second, Sonic lunged at Knuckles and the screen went black with another distorted screeching noise that lasted for at least 3 seconds. Another text message appeared. So many souls to play with, so little time. Would you agree? What the hell? Just what was going on? I started to think Sonic was actually trying to talk to me through the game, but I was too scared to think that. I was brought back to the main menu, and this time the second file box had Knuckles in the TV screen. His red fur had darkened to a reddish gray. His dreadlocks were dripping with blood, and his eyes were black and bleeding too, and he had a look of sadness on his face. I began to think that those are the actual characters trapped in those TV screens on the save files, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. So I shut off the game and took a break. I took a nap, I wish I hadn't, because then I began to have the most disturbing nightmare. I was in pitch black darkness, though I was under the light given off by a lamp that hung high above my head. I could hear the cries of Knuckles and Tails nearby. They were saying stuff like, "Help us," and "Why did you give us to him?" and "Run away before he gets you too." Their cries died out, and then I heard Sonic laugh. His laugh. It sounded a lot like the distorted Kefka laugh. You're a lot of fun to play with, kid. Just like your friend Kyle, though he didn't last long. I was scared and looking around for the source of the voice. Won't be long now till you join him and all my other friends. I saw him walking towards me, flickering in and out in several directions. You can't run, kid. You're in my world now, just like the others. When he grabbed me and I saw his bleeding black and red eyes, grinning face, I woke up with a fright. After a couple of hours, I decided to continue playing the game. I don't know why, but I had to know. I had to figure out why this was happening. So I turned on the computer, turned on the game, and selected Robotnik next. I still thought that was wacky playing as Robotnik, but anyway, the level title appeared, and this time it just said, ... which I found really freaky. This time I was in some kind of hallway. It didn't really look like it was from any of the classic Sonic games. It has the pixelated style. The floor was shiny and checkered. The walls were a dark grayish purple with animated candlelight, and a few dark bloodstains here and there. And there was even a dark red curtain hanging above the top part of the screen. Every 12 seconds or so, that red curtain sways very slowly. Whenever you're playing the game, you can barely see it move. The music was oddly pleasant. A piano playing a sad, yet peaceful song. But I knew better. This was the song that played in Hill Act 1, only it wasn't in reverse. This kid's good at telling when songs are in reverse. Also, it looks like Twitch might be crapping out again. What the heck? Twitch, what you doing? Robotnik didn't look entirely nervous like Tails and Knuckle did, but he did have a suspicious look on his face, as if he was just a bit paranoid. He did a little animation when I just left him standing. He turns his head to the left, and then to the right, at least twice, and then shrugs at me, as if he has no idea where he was or what was going on. Even though I was scared out of my mind about what was going to happen, I had Robotnik continue onward. He did his usual running animation. You know, when you've beaten him at the end of the classic Sonic game and you chase him, as we continued going through the hallway. Then I stopped at a long flight of stairs leading downward. Now I was nervous. Even Robotnik seemed unsure of himself, though I pressed onward. As I led Robotnik down the stairs, I noticed that the walls have gotten darker and more reddish. The red torches are now an eerie blue. Then we landed onto another hallway. This one was longer than the last one, or at least felt like it. Then we headed down another long flight of stairs. This one was much longer. It took at least 1 full minute. Then I heard that horrid Kefka laugh again. And then the music slowly faded until it was quiet. As it did, the walls turned more dark red, and the torches were a black flame now. When Robotnik landed onto the third hallway, I noticed he now looked really creeped out. Though he tried to hide it, I couldn't blame him. I was scared too. Suddenly, Sonic popped right in front of Robotnik the same way he did with Knuckles and then red static. The red static lasted for about 15 seconds, and then it showed me a most unpleasant image. The image showed a hyper-realistic Sonic, standing in the darkness where you can see only his face, while his head and torso faded into black. And when I say hyper-realistic, I mean like he looked so real you could actually see the lines in his blue fur, as if you could actually feel the fur if you touched the screen. His face. Oh God, he had the most horrifying smile I had ever seen. I think I've seen this Sonic. Isn't it this? It's this? There we go. That's the face. Except imagine it red and covered in blood. Can we do a redesign of that? Should we do this face, except, black sclera, red eyes, bleeding. How has no one done that, actually? Let's see, Sonic.exe pictures. Oh well, here's an image. All right, see, that's good. Sonic EXE mod pack, of course. And that's saying something, considering I saw that image at the start of the game. His eyes are wide and black, and once again crying blood, which also looks hyper-realistic. And there were two small glowing red dots in those black eyes staring right at me, as if staring into my mind. His grin was wide and demonic. He literally stretched to the sides of his face like a Cheshire cat, except Sonic had fangs. Very sharp fangs, much like the werehog's teeth. Hold up. The werehog. Oh, the werehog, huh? Much like the werehog's teeth. Night of the werehog. All right. I had no idea this existed. Okay, good to know. Much like the werehog's teeth, except more vicious looking. Somewhat yellowish from the look of it. He had stains of blood and small bits of flesh on his lips and fangs as if he ate some animal. I stared at that gruesome image for a good 30 seconds, never taking my eyes off it. I felt as if he was actually looking at me, smiling at me. That face. It just took 10 seconds for it to etch itself into my brain for good. Then the screen flickered with red static again 3 times, and on the 3rd time I heard the Kefka laugh, except this time it sounded distorted, demonic even. It went back to the image again, except this time there was the text again. Though it was messed up, it was pretty much one of the most horrifying things I looked at since I had this game. I am God. It was when I read that message while looking at Sonic that it hit me. I realized right then and there, this Sonic was a monster, a pure evil, sadistic, all-powerful, nightmarish, demented monster, and all of his victims, including Tails, Knuckles, Robotnik, and possibly Kyle, are just his little toys, and that the game is his very gateway into this chaotic, nightmarish world, and the very hell his victims are trapped in. Suddenly, in an actual split second, I screamed as Sonic lunged at the screen, screeching loudly with his mouth wide open to an unnatural length, revealing nothing but a literally spiraling abyss of pure darkness before the red static came again, this time much louder and distorted. So loud that it hurt my ears, I yelled and grabbed my ears as the red static screeched for a good 7 seconds. He's so precise about these time lengths. Then it stopped and showed nothing but black screen. As I sat there staring at the black screen, one last text came up. Ready for round 2, Tom? The Kefka laugh, now sounding more clear as if Sonic was right behind me, played again 3 times as I looked at that text in shock and confusion. Then I got booted back to the main menu, and this time the 3rd save file had a TV image of Robotnik in the same tormented state as Tails and Knuckles. Robotnik's skin turned to dull gray. His mustache drooped and had blackened. Oh, we are dropping some frames, aren't we? His glasses broke and blood coming from them, and he had a mere dead-like expression on his face. I looked at Tails, Knuckles, and Robotnik, and I cried a bit. I pitied them for the agony they're going through. They were forever trapped within the game, forever tormented by that horrid hedgehog, and will always be. Then the computer shut itself off. I couldn't turn it on, no matter what I did. I sat there for maybe 25 seconds, horrified by what had just happened. Sonic is the very embodiment of evil. He tortures people who play his game in more ways than one, and then when he gets bored, he drags you into the game, literally drags you to hell, where he can play with you and always as his toy. I can't get the game out of my computer. I think it's stuck there, but at least I managed to turn it back on now. As I sat there for 25 seconds, I heard a voice right behind me, like a whisper. Try to keep this interesting for me, Tom. I turned around to see where the voice came from, and I saw what made me scream. Sitting on my bed, staring right at me, was a Sonic plushie, smiling, with bloodstains under its eyes.
Nice. All right, my internet's a little bit frisky right now, so I think we're gonna wrap the stream up.
I do want to say, if anyone has a request, I will read that before we stop. But I'm not reading Squidward's suicide. That sounds awful. The back roads. Oh, that's a page 2, isn't it? Yeah. What's the A-est A sound? Sorted by A to Z, it's just 1999. Oh, huh. What's the lowest rated creepypasta? Who was phone? 1 minute of reading? Okay, we gotta do this one. Currently reading. Who was phone? That's the entire thing. Okay, so basically it's like this. You are at a friend's house for the night or whatever, and then you guys are making out on the couch, yeah. And then like her dad calls on the phone and says, no, she likes it more if you use the other hand, yeah. And you're all like, oh dude, your dad is trying to give me advice on how to diddle you. And she's like, I don't have a dad, or whatever. But wait, whose phone? Also, so you're with your honey and you're making out when the phone rings. You answer, and the voice is, what are you doing with my daughter? You tell your girl and she say, my dad is dead. Then whose phone? That's all there is. Whose phone? Oh, wow. The stream is quite a bit behind. Okay. Well, I just want to say that we're really close to 500, and once we get to 500, we're going to do a karaoke stream again, just to have fun with karaoke stream. Let me just refresh the page. Is this really how far back it's going? We're just dropping a lot of frames, aren't we? Let's just switch to the spooky Halloween thing. Yeah, we're pretty far back. Okay, my internet might be dying. All right. Bitrate says it's fine though. It's so weird. Okay. This Halloween expedition has been so much fun. We're gonna play some spooky games next time off of itch.io. And then I have one last Halloween stream planned for Halloween night. Because you see, I just so happened to stream on Halloween night. So we're gonna be watching a movie together. A movie. We're going to raid an Australian VTuber so that we can make sure. Oh no, I rated her recently, didn't I? Give me just a second. What raids have I done? Oh no, not what raids have I. Not what raids have I sent. What raids have I done? I rated her not too long ago, didn't I? No, I haven't. Okay, cool. All right, we're gonna raid Akai Risu, who is a Australian penguin who is playing Phasmophobia, a game which I hear is pretty fun. So let me throw my raid message up in chat. If you're still in chat, feel free to join me. Oh, the internet is struggling. Okay. I'm going to set the stream to the outro, and then set the raid up just so we have plenty of time. But thank you everyone for joining. My name is Isaac Anzu. You're the best. And let's go say hi to Akai Risu. Farewell.